Hey guys, tonight we step back into the mucky, miracle, hungry world of medieval Europe, where spiritual road trips are all the rage, shoes are optional, and a metal trinket shaped like a dismembered saint's body part is the hottest accessory you can own. You, my friend, are a fresh-faced pilgrim with a head full of prayers, a stomach full of onions, and zero clue what's ahead. You squint at the rising sun as you set off from your lichen-covered village, somewhere between "where the heck is this?" and "don't worry, no one important was born here." Your sandals flap against the mud, and every step already feels like your toes are rethinking their life choices. Around your neck dangles a simple wooden cross, but your tunic is bare of any real clout. You haven't earned a single badge yet, not even a minor one. You're a spiritual nobody. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, post your location and local time. I love seeing how far these sleepy adventures travel. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're walking toward Canterbury, a decent trek if the roads are clear, the robbers lazy, and your knees cooperative. Spoiler alert, they won't be. Still, you're buzzing with a strange excitement. Everyone back home is slightly jealous. They'll pretend they aren't, but they totally are. Sure, you're doing this for the soul, saving indulgences, but let's be honest, the humble bragging rights are solid too. By noon, your back already protests like a 90-year-old ex-monk. A donkey cart rumbles past, its driver giving you the "you poor sucker" look reserved for fresh pilgrims. You're still clean. That won't last. The roadside is alive with other travelers. Some chant psalms, others hum catchy tavern tunes. You pass a group of teens making the journey for fun, which is confusing until you realize they're basically medieval spring breakers, complete with a wineskin full of questionable decisions. At the next hilltop, you spot your first rest stop, a weathered shrine dedicated to some semi-famous saint who reportedly sneezed out a miracle. You drop a coin in the alms box and kneel. The prayer is brief. Your knees are not fans of cobblestone. A sleepy monk nods from the shadows. He says nothing but gestures toward a tiny wooden stall out front. Your first badge booth. It's underwhelming. Just a plank of wood, a sagging canvas roof, and a jolly woman selling tiny pewter badges shaped like the saint's nose. You blink. That's specific. Still, you buy one. It's your first. You don't know where to pin it, so you jab it onto your cloak like a nervous intern slapping on a "hello, my name is" sticker. Mainstream historical fact. Oh yes, millions of Europeans went on pilgrimages during the Middle Ages, and many did collect badges from holy sites. These weren't just souvenirs. They were proof. Visual testimonials that you'd suffered your way to holiness. Like today's marathon medals, but with more blisters and less electrolytes. And here's a weird tidbit for your dreams. One real badge from this era was shaped like a urinating monk. It's believed to be either satirical or possibly promoting a saint who cured bladder issues. Historians still argue whether it was genuine devotion or just medieval humor at its weirdest. The rest of the afternoon is uneventful, minus the hailstorm, the lost sandal, and the fact that you accidentally eat something labeled travel cheese, which might actually be wax. You shrug. At least your badge survived. By nightfall, you've joined a small caravan of other pilgrims. One has 3 badges. You feel like the kid at school with off-brand sneakers, but you hold your head high. You're officially on the path. And that means something. Somewhere in the celestial HR department, your spiritual resume just gained 1 bullet point. You sleep in a barn beside a snoring friar and a goose that keeps staring at you like it knows something. Maybe it does. Medieval animals were suspiciously plot relevant. As you drift off, the badge on your cloak glints faintly in the moonlight. It's a crude little thing, but it carries weight. Emotional, spiritual, and honestly, physical. These pewter bits aren't light, and as you'll learn soon enough, your cloak's about to get a lot heavier. You wake to the wet slap of something cold and goose-shaped nudging your foot. The barn smells like straw, sweat, and the kind of mold that probably has medieval medicinal properties if you smear it on the right body part. You stretch. Regrettably, every joint sounds like it's auditioning for a role in a percussion band. Outside, the sky is doing that classic English thing, being gray in every direction like a damp bedsheet draped over the world. You hobble to your feet, already missing your old life of sitting still and not walking 15 miles a day. Your fellow pilgrims are stirring. One's brushing their teeth with a twig, another's muttering prayers while trying to reattach a sandal that died heroically in yesterday's mudslide. A woman nearby is oiling her feet with something that smells like garlic and maybe vengeance. She catches your eye and nods solemnly. Foot care is serious business. By breakfast, which consists of slightly charred porridge and a communal onion, the sky opens up. Of course it does. The rain feels personal, like the clouds know your cloak just dried. But there's no turning back. You shoulder your pack and begin the day's slog. The path is slippery and uneven, occasionally interrupted by puddles that are either 1 inch or 1 foot deep. There's no way to know until you step in, and step in you do. Frequently, your secondhand sandals give up by midday. Blisters begin to bloom across your heels like angry little mushrooms. Still, you press on. Every mile is penance. Every ache is proof of your faith. That's what they say anyway. In reality, it's a lot of muttering and squinting at road markers that appear to have been drawn by a drunken sheep. Along the road, you pass more shrines, each modest, each bearing its own lore. One marks the spot where a saint supposedly coughed up a sapphire. You don't ask questions. Another features a holy well where someone once saw a vision in the ripples. You see only your miserable reflection. Pilgrims begin to chatter. There's word of a famed badge vendor up ahead, one whose pewter molds are blessed by a bishop, or so the legend goes. You quicken your pace despite your protesting arches. Badges aren't just trinkets. They're your proof of journey, of pain endured, and prayers said. They make the invisible visible. Plus, they jingle nicely when you walk. Mainstream Fact Time Canterbury, your destination, became one of the most visited pilgrimage sites in Europe after the murder of Thomas Becket in 1170. People flocked there hoping for healing, redemption, or at least a decent story to tell, and nearly every one of them took home a badge, often featuring Becket's face, a sword, or the shrine itself. Quirky detail alert pilgrims were known to sew these badges directly into their hats or cloaks. Some had so many they clanked like armor. Others wore them like holy versions of punk band patches, proof of where they'd been, and maybe who they hoped to become. You finally arrive at the badge vendor's stand. It's glorious. A 3-wheeled cart bursting with tiny metal miracles, scallop shells for St. James, little crosses for Jerusalem, a highly questionable badge shaped like a baby with wings. You want them all. But you're poor. You settle on a modest one, staying Thomas Becket's mitre. You squint at it. His face looks more like a potato with eyes. Close enough. You pin it next to your first badge, careful to avoid stabbing yourself again. That's badge number 2. You're officially a collector. The vendor smiles and slips you a bent one for free. Miscast? He says. But sometimes flaws make it holier. You nod like you understand. You don't. That night, you camp beside a hedgerow, soaked to your bones, but oddly proud. Your feet are wrecked, your clothes smell like regret, and your belly is rumbling. But on your cloak, proof. Tiny, awkward proof that you're inching toward something sacred. Or at least interesting enough to justify all this pain. You study your badges in the firelight. One's chipped, the other is bent, and both are smeared with mud. They glint when they catch the flame. They're ugly. Honest. Yours. Historians still argue whether these badges were seen as spiritual talismans or simply medieval merch. Maybe both. Maybe neither. Maybe it depends on whether the badge vendor included a bonus relic hair with your purchase. As you drift into sleep, raindrops pattering gently on your face, but you realize something: you might be miserable, but you're also part of a tradition. One that involves equal parts devotion, discomfort, and decorative tint. You wake to the delicate sound of a donkey chewing grass too close to your face. A few feet away, a barefoot man is loudly arguing with a bird. Standard pilgrim morning. You stretch, brush the dead leaf off your cheek, and check your cloak. Still pin of 2 badges, slightly rusted, slightly bent, still proud. Today's route hugs a wide, lazy river dotted with little bridges and the occasional suspicious ripple. Possibly fish, possibly curses. As you trudge onward, the path thickens with travelers. You overhear talk of a larger shrine just ahead, one that draws the pious and the opportunistic in equal measure. By midday, the trees thin, and you reach a bustling crossroad. Pilgrims cluster like pigeons around a roadside shrine. More impressive than the last, with a wooden canopy, real candles, and a monk who appears to be selling indulgences out of a basket. But what really grabs your attention is the row of vendors lining the path like a pop. Up, medieval Etsy fair. Their carts are overflowing with gleaming wares. Rows of pewter badges catch the sun like fish scales, strung on twine or mounted on scrap wood. Some dangle from makeshift racks fashioned from antlers. Others lie nestled in little boxes of straw, as if they're precious gems instead of smelted tin. And oh, the variety. One badge is shaped like a saint's foot, complete with lovingly detailed toenails. Another shows a knight fighting a snail, possibly symbolic, possibly just weird. A few are shaped like churches, towers, or literal suns with little smiley faces hammered into them. You pause in front of a badge that looks suspiciously like a fried egg. The vendor swears it's the Holy Spirit. You squint, you nod. Mainstream historical moment, these pilgrim badge booths were more than just souvenir stands. They were tightly linked to local economies. Some shrines even produced their own official badges, stamping them with unique insignias to guarantee authenticity, kind of like holy trademarks. If your badge had the right mark, people knew you'd been to the real deal. But fringe detail. Some badge sellers didn't wait near shrines. They roamed festivals, taverns, and crossroads hawking secondhand or questionably blessed badges. One 14th century complaint even mentioned a guy flogging badges from 5 different saints, none of whom had actual shrines within 100 miles. Hustle recognized hustle. You wander from cart to cart, marveling at the creativity and chaotic energy of medieval metalworking. Some badges are tiny masterpieces. Others are, let's say, interpretive. A few bear inscriptions in Latin, although one looks like it was inscribed by someone who gave up halfway through and just added squiggles. You buy another badge. You can't help it. It's shaped like a fish with angel wings. You don't even know what it represents. The vendor shrugs when asked. Popular with children, she says. That settles it. Now 3 badges dangle from your cloak, and you feel strangely weighted by them. Not physically. The pewter's light enough. But emotionally, each one a little whisper of somewhere you've been, something you've endured. Proof that the journey is adding up, even if your feet strongly disagree. You notice others are shopping with strategy. Some pilgrims clearly know their badge lore. One is asking whether a certain design is pre or post relic discovery, as if debating medieval sneaker drops. Another is bargaining for a rare badge that supposedly contains a sliver of holy dirt sealed inside. You, however, are a badge opportunist. If it looks cool, weird, or has a good story, it's going on your cloak. Historians still argue whether badges were seen as genuine channels of divine power or mostly symbolic. Some believe the act of collecting them became a kind of spiritual insurance policy. Others think it was more performative, like saying, "Look how holy I am!" and also stylish. Late in the day, you sit beneath a twisted tree, sipping weak ale and admiring your collection. Nearby, a group of fellow pilgrims compares badges like they're trading cards. One boasts of having a double, Beckett, two faces, one mold. Another flashes a heart-shaped badge from a French shrine, rumored to glow in the dark. You raise an eyebrow, probably just polished. Still, a pang of envy hits. Badge envy. It's a real thing. You'll see. You pin your latest edition beside the others, spacing them with care. Your cloak now jingles faintly when you move. A tiny clatter of holy metal that marks your progress better than any map. As dusk falls, you walk back toward your makeshift camp, cheeks flushed from mild sun and social anxiety. In your pack, stale bread, a crumpled note from a kind friar, and your growing arsenal of saint-approved tinware. Not bad for a day's journey. The morning air smells like sheep and adventure, or maybe just sheep. You're halfway through a cold onion when the bells of a nearby chapel begin to ring. They're not especially melodic, more like a goat coughing into a tin bucket, but they call you forward all the same. Ahead, a stone path climbs gently toward a larger village with proper buildings, actual chimneys, and, miracle of miracles, cobbled streets. You limp toward it, legs stiff, badges jingling softly like nervous applause. In the square, a crowd forms around a cluster of relics set out for veneration. You elbow through the mass of cloaks and elbows, eyes wide. There it is, a sliver of the true cross, or one of many, and a cloudy vial of what's labeled virgin's milk. You stare. It looks suspiciously like watered-down cheese. You move on, then there's the toenail. That's right, a big, yellowed nail nestled in a velvet-lined box. The sign says it belonged to St. Gertrude, patroness of cats and travelers. There's no way to verify this. There's also no way not to stare. A friar next to you mumbles, smells like piety, and makes the sign of the cross. You feel a nudge from behind. A badge seller, smiling like he knows exactly what he's doing, holds up a tray pewter replicas of the toenail, lovingly cast with exaggerated curves, and what might be faint ridges. He sees your expression and shrugs. People love the grotesque, he says. It reminds them saints were human too. Mainstream fact relics, no matter how bizarre, were central to the medieval pilgrimage experience. Every major shrine boasted some bones, blood, hair, and yes, even milk. Pilgrims believed that proximity to such items could bring blessings, healing, and indulgences. Quirky detail, in some places, they even had relics of relics, like a piece of the box that once held the sandal, that once touched the foot of the saint who once sneezed during a sermon. Real exception. Collect them all. You buy the toenail badge. Of course you do. You're not a monster. It's heavy. Heavier than your other badges, both in weight and somehow emotional baggage. You pin it high on your cloak, where it lurches slightly to the left. Your shoulder is now officially the most blessed part of your body. Nearby, a boy about 10 years old is selling painted wooden tokens. Saints' stories, he says, pointing to each one. One shows a woman wrestling a dragon. Saint Margaret, naturally. Another shows a man being boiled alive. You raise an eyebrow? Saint John, the boy says. Probably. You buy one, because why not? It's badly painted and smells of vinegar, but it feels honest. As the day drifts on, you follow the line of pilgrims toward the main shrine in town, a squat stone church with iron doors, and a faded mural of angels whose faces have all peeled off. Inside, incense coils lazily in the air. Candles flicker. A priest recites prayers in Latin, sounding like he's doing it for the 1,000th time this week, which he probably is. At the altar, more relics wait. A scrap of cloth from the Virgin Mary's veil, maybe a tooth from St. Cuthbert, definitely a tooth, and a rock that Jesus supposedly stubbed his toe on during his childhood, citation needed. And, of course, more badges. This church has its own collection, displayed behind glass like a medieval trophy case. Some are exquisite tiny hands, radiant suns, angels holding swords, and one that's just a very smug-looking donkey. You recognize the style. This town has a high-end badge moldery. Fancy stuff. Limited runs. The friar says one of their badges even ended up in Rome. You queue for yours, shuffle forward slowly with the others. When it's your turn, the monk gives you a pin shaped like an open eye. It's unsettling, but you accept it with reverence and pin it beneath your shoulder, next to the holy toenail. You're now the proud owner of 5 badges. Your cloak jingles with every step. You're a walking reliquary, a tapestry of devotion, discomfort, and escalating back pain. Historians still argue whether badges like these were seen as magical charms or simply social tokens. Some were likely both, worn to protect, to signal belief, or just to fit in with the badge-jangling crowd. As night falls, you sit on a crumbling wall outside the church, legs dangling, watching the sky turn soft pink. A fellow pilgrim sidles up next to you, eyeing your badges. "Not bad," she says. "You've been places?" You nod, smile, and tap the toenail. "This one's from a saint who once scared off the devil with a sneeze." She laughs. "That's not in the Bible." You shrug. It is now. A morning arrives with a creak in your back and the delightful sensation of a slug exploring your ankle. You flick it off with as much grace as a sleep-deprived pilgrim can manage and sit up. Your cloak clinks faintly as you move. Badges. Your growing metal menagerie. You brush off the damp leaves and begin repacking your things, already feeling the tug of the day's path ahead. As you walk, the trail becomes noticeably more crowded. You're nearing one of the larger pilgrimage arteries now. A well-trodden route lined with chapels, roadside crosses, and an ever-growing number of badge-bearing pilgrims. Some wear theirs like trophies, rows of gleaming saints, crosses, and relics spanning entire cloaks. Others have sewn theirs into hats, bags, even shoes. You spot one man with a badge on his dog's collar. Holy good boy. You pause at a roadside inn that advertises soup, sleep, and soul saving. A smart business model, honestly. As you sip your watery broth, you overhear a conversation at the next table. 2 pilgrims are deep in competitive bragging. "I got this one in Santiago." One says, tapping a massive scallop shell pin to his chest. "Ah." The other nods smugly. "But mine is from Jerusalem, carved from olive wood and blessed by 5 monks." You slurp quietly. The humble bragging is real. Mainstream fact incoming. Pilgrimage badges weren't just personal keepsakes. They were social currency. Returning with a full cloak of badges showed not just your piety, but your survival skills. You'd made it to the shrine and back. You'd endured thieves, weather, illness, and questionable cheese. Pilgrims wore badges to funerals, to festivals, even to court appearances. "Look at me," they said without speaking. "I'm not just spiritually committed. I'm spiritually accomplished." That kind of status symbol wasn't lost on the medieval world. In an age without Instagram, badges were the ultimate travel flex. You finish your soup and rejoin the road, now walking beside a woman whose cloak is practically armored in metal. She must have 20, maybe 30 badges. They shimmer with every step, and you wonder if she's made of pure devotion or just likes collecting shiny things. You ask her. She just winks. Then comes your first river crossing of the day. The bridge is narrow, swaying slightly, and predictably, there's a toll. You scrounge your purse and hand over a few coins. The toll taker eyes your cloak, nods at your badges, and says, "Not bad. St. Gertrude, right?" You blink. "Yes. Toenail edition." He grins. "Got the elbow version myself. Quirky detail time. Some shrines actually produce different series of badges over the years. New saints, new miracles, even special editions tied to local events. There were trends, collectors, and even forgeries. You're basically living in the medieval equivalent of a Pokemon badge quest. Gotta bless 'em all. As the day wanes, you reach another bustling waypoint. This one with a shrine, a tavern, and, inevitably, more badge booths. This time, you decide to observe before buying. You notice patterns, how the best selling badges are always front and center. How some vendors shout miracle claims, while others lean into mystery and silence. You chat with a young vendor, whose stall is a disorganized masterpiece of molds, strings, and tiny hammers. What sells best? You ask. Goose saints, he says immediately. People love a good goose. You raise an eyebrow. There are goose saints. He shrugs. There are now. You buy one. As the sun sets, you settle into camp beside a campfire circle of strangers who become fast friends by badge count. Everyone takes turns showing off their collection. One man has badges shaped like hearts, swords, even a fish riding a donkey. Each one sparks a story. Some stories sound suspiciously exaggerated. One involves spontaneous levitation. You smile and nod. Historians still argue whether badges were meant to testify to truth or simply to inspire. Perhaps a badge didn't need to be accurate if it stirred the soul, or if it made people laugh, or if it got you a free bowl of soup from a sympathetic friar. As the fire dies down, you feel the weight of your own cloak, not just physically, though that's certainly happening, but as a record of where you've been and what you've chosen to remember. Every badge is a tiny bookmark in your unfolding story, proof that you're more than just a tired pilgrim with blistered feet. You fall asleep listening to a fellow traveler describe the badge she hopes to find tomorrow. It's shaped like a ladder, she whispers, for Jacob's dream. You nod in the darkness, smile tucked beneath your blanket, and dream of ladders. You wake to the sound of two men arguing over whether St. Cuthbert's nose ever actually glowed in the dark. One swears he saw it in a chapel near the edge of Wales. The other insists that was just a painted candle. You, meanwhile, are too busy trying to get a pebble out of your shoe without removing your entire leg. The morning begins as most pilgrim mornings do. Damp, loud, and slightly miraculous if you find your socks. The road today winds through open fields, golden with harvest and buzzing with fat bees. You walk alongside a young couple who introduce themselves as Marjorie and Wilfred. They explain, doing the pilgrimage for penance. You ask what they did. Marjorie blushes. Wilfred just winks and says, "Let's just say the bishop suggested it." Vague. Suspicious. Classic. As you pass another makeshift shrine, this one an upright log with a crucifix nailed to it, you spot a few pilgrims gathered not for prayer, but for trading. Badges, spread out on a cloth like tiny, gleaming playing cards. One man offers 2 stain James shells for a rarer badge shaped like a pilgrim's staff. Someone else proposes a swap involving a melted, barely recognizable saint. Abstract interpretation, he claims. You linger, curious. A woman next to you whispers, "Most of these folks aren't even trying to be saved. They just want the shiny bits." You nod slowly. You've been noticing that too. Mainstream historical note. Not every medieval pilgrim was deeply pious. Some were indeed devout, seeking healing or forgiveness. But others treated pilgrimage more like tourism, an excuse to travel, socialize, and collect flashy badges. Some even paid others to go in their place, badges acting as proof of a journey never taken. Quirky tidbit? There are records of people buying fake badges at inns miles from any real shrine. One notable case involves a woman in 1390 who sold badges from a non-existent St. Hubert's elbow shrine. She made a fortune until someone realized Hubert didn't even have a shrine, or possibly an elbow. The line between pilgrim and tourist, it seems, was always a little fuzzy. You press on, wondering where you fall on the spectrum. Sure, you mutter your prayers, but you've also found yourself judging badge designs more than theological meaning lately. You stare at a fish, shaped one for a bit too long, and wonder if it would complement your collection. The road grows crowded by midday. A group of musicians joins the stream of travelers, playing a tune that's half hymn, half tavern banger. The mood lifts. Badges flash in the sun. Someone starts a badge counting contest. You're at 6 now. Respectable. One woman proudly displays 32. She's sweating under the weight but smiling like she's invincible. Later, you rest at a way station offering food, shelter, and, of course, a badge vending table. You spot a badge shaped like a heart pierced by 3 swords. Dramatic. You ask the vendor what it represents. He shrugs. Could be St. Bridget. Could be something else. Looks good, though. You buy it. A young man nearby sees your collection and scoffs. You're one of those, he mutters. Just collecting shiny things. You raise an eyebrow. And you're here for what? Enlightenment. He blushes. Also shiny things. But I pretend better. That night, a storm rolls in, soaking cloaks, smudging ink, and sending some badges rusting slightly at the edges. Ears hold firm. You sit beneath a tree with Marjorie and Wilfred, watching lightning flash behind a distant monastery tower. We'll probably just hang these on our wall when we get back, Marjorie admits, fiddling with a badge shaped like a dove. Wilfred leans back. Or give them to our kids. Tell them we were braver than we were. Historians still argue whether badge collecting diluted the spiritual intent of pilgrimage or enriched it. Maybe both. Maybe a pewter trinket could be both faith and fashion, reminder and reward, sincerity and spectacle. Humans contain multitudes, so do cloaks. As the storm dies down and the stars come out, you glance at your own badge collection. A ladder, a heart, a fish, a questionable toenail, each one weird, each one wonderful, each one a step on the road, regardless of your reasons. And tomorrow, you suspect, you'll be looking for another. The next morning smells of wet grass, smoke, and the faint tang of someone overcooking porridge nearby. You rise, stretch, and hear your cloak jingle slightly. Now a routine comfort, like an offbeat lullaby made of tin. 7 badges, each awkwardly spaced, and only occasionally stabbing you in the side. You're following a wider road today. Well, worn by countless feet and cartwheels. Stone markers dot the path, some carved with crosses, others with what looks suspiciously like smiley faces. No one explains those. You don't ask. Your first stop is a small shrine wedged between 2 oaks. It's run by a brother-sister team with matching robes and very mismatched attitudes. She beams. He glares. They both sell badges. You browse their tray. Some designs are familiar, scallop shells, swords, crosses. Others are strange. One badge is shaped like a goose wearing a halo. Another looks like a man with a fish tail and a church for a hat. You blink. What exactly are these? The sister leans in. The goose is for St. Arid. There's a story about him saving a gaggle from a fox. And the other. She lowers her voice. We think it's Saint Falamuth, or possibly a miscast dragon saint. The mold broke. But some folks say it's lucky. You buy it, obviously. Mainstream historical reality. Badge design went wild during the later medieval period. What began as simple, reverent symbols turned into a wild medley of saints, relics, stories, and even secular icons. Badges featuring animals, riddles, body jokes, and cryptic slogans were common. People wanted their badges to stand out, both as spiritual trophies and conversation starters. Some pilgrims even commissioned custom molds. One noble family was known for handing out badges shaped like their family crest, blessed at their local chapel, as part of a long, slow campaign of religious PR, blessings and branding. Medieval synergy. You continue down the road, amused by the designs now jangling on your cloak. You've got a goose, a toenail, a ladder, and what might be a holy clam. Other pilgrims give you second glances, but in a way that says, interesting, rather than you okay. A group of musicians passes, playing pipes and drums. One stops to admire your badges. You got a dancing saint yet? He asks. What? He grins and pulls his cloak aside to reveal a badge showing a saint mid-jig. Arms up, feet flying. Saint Vitus, patron of dancers, actors, and people who twitch. You stare. I need that. He shrugs. Won it in a dice game. Lost my hat. Kept the badge. You press on, half laughing at how absurd it's all becoming. Badges are becoming more than mementos, they're a language. A secret, clinking dialect of where you've been, what you've endured, and what you find worth remembering. You stop at a stone fountain where several pilgrims are comparing their collections. A young woman points to yours. You've got the bent goose! That's rare. Only came out for a few years before they changed the mold. You glance at it. I thought it was just defective. She shrugs. Could be. But rarity makes it holy. Fringe tidbit, some badge designs were retired or changed, leading to collector's items. Among the devout. Pilgrims would trade, haggle, even steal to get rare editions. One documented brawl broke out in 1423 over a misprinted St. George badge. It showed the saint facing the wrong way. Some called it cursed. Others just really wanted it. You pick up a few new editions at the next town. One shaped like a tower with wings, another showing a saint holding what looks like a very confused pig. You ask what the pig means. The seller shrugs. Maybe he loved pigs. Maybe it's a metaphor. Maybe it's lunch. Historians still debate whether some of the more obscure badge designs held deep, local meaning, or were just pewter craftspeople getting creative and occasionally tipsy. Either way, they've left us a legacy of devotion mingled with delightful absurdity. That night, you camp by a hill under stars so bright they feel close enough to pluck. You lay back, cloak spread like a heavy blanket. Your badges glitter in the firelight. They're weird. They're wonderful. They're yours. You fall asleep imagining what badge might come next. Maybe something truly strange. A saint hugging a snail. A candle with wings. A badge shaped like a badge. You'd wear it? Of course you would. Dawn breaks reluctantly. The sky is still moody, painted in gray smudges, and there's that familiar early morning panic. Where is your sock? And why does the air smell like roasted turnips? You find the sock, somehow inside your hood, and glance down at your badge. Laden cloak. It now resembles a spiritual scrapbook, stitched with saints, animals, and one badge you're still convinced is just a very tired potato. Today's road cuts through flatter country, low hedgerows, soggy ditches, and fields of cabbages stretching to the horizon. It rains. Of course it does. The kind of fine, needly drizzle that soaks you precisely because it's too polite to look threatening. Your sandals squish. Your eyebrows leak. You do your best to shield your cloak from the damp. But pewter doesn't care. It shines anyway, throwing off little sparks of reflected daylight. You try to admire it like a triumphant knight admiring his armor. You mostly feel like a wet towel full of coins. Around midday, you reach a town called Stonemarsh. It's not large, but it has one critical feature: a bridge. A proper one, with railings, inscriptions, and a sagging sign advertising authentic relic site, verified miracles, hot soup. You cross the bridge, ignoring the puddle that pretends to be shallow until your ankle disappears into it. Just before the shrine, a market sprawls across the muddy square. Traders, pilgrims, pickpockets. You're not sure which is which. You clutch your coin pouch just a bit tighter, then you see it. A badge stall, larger than any you've seen before. The awning is striped. The vendor has a bell. A bell. That's some real badge confidence. You approach. The vendor is already mid-pitch. Blessed by bishops! Endorsed by friars! Crafted by hand? By eyes that have seen visions? He's got badges shaped like suns. Badges with spinning parts. Even a badge that opens to reveal a smaller badge inside. You stare. He beams. Double blessing. You buy one. Obviously. But as you pin it onto your rain-slicked cloak, something catches your eye at a nearby stall. A slightly wonky badge depicting a miracle you're pretty sure hasn't actually happened. A saint you don't recognize, standing triumphantly over a demon shaped like a turnip. You squint. What miracle is this? The woman running the stall leans in. That's Saint Ludric. He banished a demon from a vegetable patch using only his voice and a small bell. You pause. Is that real? She shrugs. It's popular? Mainstream truth? The line between real miracles and fabricated ones often blurred in the world of medieval pilgrimage. Local legends evolved, vendors capitalized, and people bought what moved them, or what made them laugh. Spiritual depth varied. And here's a quirky nugget. Some badges were total fabrications. dreamt up by ambitious artisans looking to create demand. They'd invent obscure saints, newly discovered relics, or rebrand old legends with flashier imagery. Saint Ludric might not be real, but if people bought his badge, who's arguing? You stand there, soaked but intrigued, holding a badge that might represent a maid, up saint with a fondness for root vegetables. And you want it. Not despite its absurdity, but because of it. You buy it. Your cloak now jingles in a different key. Then comes the disaster. A sudden gust of wind, a clumsy step, and your parchment map goes flying into a puddle with dramatic finality. You lunge. Too late. It's a soggy, illegible mess. Gun? You sit on a barrel, dripping. Defeated? But then, small mercy, your badges are still there, gleaming defiantly. You run your fingers across them. The fish, the goose, the eye, the ladder, the holy toenail, these are your markers now. Proof of passage, memory anchors, a map made of metal. Historians still argue whether pilgrims saw badges as spiritual receipts or talismans. Some evidence suggests people carried them, even on non-pilgrimage journeys, as protection or conversation starters. Others buried them with the dead. Eternal journey bling. A friar walking by notices your despondent puddle, sitting. Lost your map, he asks. You nod. He taps your cloak. This is your map now. And he walks off, cloak swirling dramatically like he practices that exit daily. That night, you dry yourself by a tavern hearth, sipping lukewarm ale, your cloak stretched beside the fire like a soggy tapestry. Other pilgrims sit nearby, equally damp, equally badge-clad. A quiet kinship. You trade a story for a badge. A tiny boat from a traveler who'd come from across the sea. You give her your questionable goose saint in return. It's a fair trade. Weirdness for weirdness. As you lie down on your straw pallet, cloak wrapped tightly, the badges click softly as you shift. A tin lullaby. You close your eyes and drift off. No map, no certainty. Just the warm clatter of tiny miracles to guide you. You wake to a donkey licking your hair. Again, this is becoming a theme. The sky outside the tavern is clear for once, bright and blue, a rare gift. You step into the light, feeling freshly crumpled and mostly human. Your cloak has dried into a crunchy approximation of fabric. The badges survived beautifully. In fact, they gleam now more than ever, each one catching the sunlight like a tiny spotlight of semi-legitimate sanctity. As you rejoin the road, you pass a trio of pilgrims whispering near a roadside grove. They glance at you, then quickly look away. You slow down. One of them, a short man with a beard shaped like a spatula, is holding a badge. It's beautiful. Clean lines, rich detail, the unmistakable gleam of high-quality pewter. You admire it. Say, Julian. You ask, he smiles. Sure. That doesn't sound reassuring. Another pilgrim leans in. We know a guy. Has access to exclusive badges. Very rare. Stuff that hasn't even reached the shrines yet. You blink. Hasn't reached them. He nods sagely, like that makes sense. He gets in early. You follow them off the road, down a winding sheep path to a mossy clearing. There, under a tarp, sits a man with a chest full of badges. And what badges they are. Every saint you've heard of, and at least 6 you haven't. All rendered in pewter, so polished it nearly blinds you. This one, he says, holding up a badge shaped like a roaring lion with a halo, is from Saint Crispald of the Seven Flames. Miracles include lightning protection and superior baking. You frown. Is that real? He leans in, lowers his voice. Does it matter? Mainstream reality check by the late Middle Ages. A thriving black market for pilgrimage badges had developed. Some were honest replicas. Others were forgeries, fake shrines, fake saints, fake miracles. And pilgrims, eager to impress or bargain, sometimes bought them knowingly. A rare badge made you special, even if it was invented last Tuesday. You eye the chest. Some designs are amazing saints mid-flight, glowing halos, even movable parts. Others are creative. One badge is shaped like a duck in armor. Another appears to be a weeping tree. You hold up a badge showing a monk doing a handstand. Saint Giles in repose. The man offers. You laugh. You buy it? quirky tidbit: some medieval badges were so bizarre scholars still argue about their meaning. A handful may have been satirical, mocking popular saints, or the badge craze itself. Others were probably made up on the spot by clever pewtersmiths. One badge discovered in the Thames showed a two-headed saint with one mouth smiling and one frowning. Historians still debate if it was spiritual commentary or just a Weird Tuesday project. As you head back to the road, a merchant passing by gives your new badge a look. "St. Giles?" He says. "Haven't seen that one since Bruges." You nod mysteriously. Very exclusive. You're aware that you've just entered a slightly more gray area of pilgrimage life. Your badge may be real, or not, or both. But it still glints proudly on your cloak, nestled between the fish and the holy toenail like it belongs. By early afternoon, you reach a small chapel surrounded by wildflowers, a modest shrine, quiet and peaceful. Inside, a lone monk tends to a stack of candles. He notices your cloak. "You've come far," he says. You nod. He gestures toward a low table bearing just a few badges. Simple, unadorned, stamped with a cross and a sunburst. You admire them. They're the opposite of your new acquisitions. Humble, almost plain. You buy one. Pin it to the bottom corner of your cloak like an anchor. A reminder of where this journey started. Historians still argue whether the badge black market harmed the sanctity of pilgrimage or simply reflected how human the whole enterprise was. Desire, status, novelty. They traveled the road as surely as faith did. That night, you sit by a stream with a few other pilgrims. A man plays a reed flute. A woman tells the story of how her badge once glowed during a thunderstorm. You share your tale of St. Crispald and his legendary lightning-proof scones. They laugh. They believe you. Or they don't. But that's not the point. Your cloak is a patchwork of places, moments, half-truths, and whole hopes. Some badges you earned, some you bartered. One may be complete nonsense. But all of them are yours, and in the flickering firelight, that feels like enough. The next morning opens with soft birdsong and the distinct realization that you've rolled onto your side and crushed a badge into your rib. You groan, sit up, and immediately feel the shifting weight of your badge collection trying to pull your cloak off your shoulders. It's getting heavy. Really heavy. You shuffle to your feet and join the stream of travelers already forming a steady tide down the dusty road. Today, the talk is all about the shrine up ahead, one of the bigger ones, supposedly overflowing with relics, pilgrims, music, and, more importantly, badges so coveted they have waiting lists. Waiting lists for pewter. The road turns busy fast. By mid-morning, you're basically in a slow, moving badge parade. Every pilgrim around you is jangling with metal, some proudly, others awkwardly. One man has strung his badges together like a belt. Another wears them like a necktie. You see one woman with a full tabard of them, clinking like a kitchen drawer full of forks. As you crest a hill, you see it, the shrine town, stone buildings, fluttering banners, and crowds already gathered around its gates. The air smells of incense, baking bread, and unwashed socks. You're funneled through the gate alongside dozens of others, all buzzing with anticipation. The main square is chaos. Drummers, hawkers, friars shouting blessings, someone handing out small miracle-themed pastries. You accept one. It's shaped like a lamb. Tastes like very devout cardboard. At the heart of it all stands the shrine itself. Tall, ornate, carved with saints in poses so dramatic they'd fit right in on a rock album cover. And in front, a badge booth unlike any you've ever seen. It's massive, gleaming, lined with velvet. Guards stand watch. A monk in ceremonial robes controls access like a bouncer at a holy nightclub. A sign reads, "Limited edition badges available today only. One per pilgrim." You queue? Of course you do. Mainstream historical insight. Larger pilgrimage shrines often produce their own exclusive badges, stamped with unique insignia, and sometimes even dated. These weren't just souvenirs. They were tokens of authenticity, proof you'd made it to the real shrine. Some of these designs were updated annually, making each badge part of an evolving series, like collectible figurines, but with divine endorsement. You finally reach the front. The monk eyes your cloak. Ah, he says. A seasoned traveler. You nod. I'm here for the badge. He opens a small wooden chest and pulls out today's offering, a finely detailed piece showing a saint raising a staff over a kneeling demon. It's intricate, a bit heavy, and beautiful. You accept it with the kind of reverence normally reserved for wedding rings or fried food. You pin it dead center. Your cloak now tugs at your shoulders with dramatic flair. Every step announces you like a particularly devout tambourine. Quirky tidbit. Some pilgrims return to shrines multiple times just to collect each year's badge variation. One 15th century Englishman reportedly visited the shrine of Our Lady of Walsingham every spring for 20 years, amassing an entire spectrum of colored badges. People thought he was either incredibly holy or just really into shiny things. Back in the square, the badge economy is thriving. Pilgrims trade, bargain, boast. One man offers to swap his miracle weasel badge for your new one. You decline, but respect the hustle. Then you meet the traders, pilgrims who aren't just journeying for themselves, but also collecting for others. They show you letters from noble patrons, each requesting a specific badge or relic. I've got one for Lady Branswick, a woman says, flipping through her pouch. She wants 3 versions of St. Hubert this season. You blink, pilgrimage as personal errand service. Blessed Instacart. Historians still argue whether this practice undermined the personal nature of pilgrimage or reflected a broader community expression of faith. Maybe it did both. Maybe Lady Branswick's soul really did benefit from a badge she never wore. Maybe spiritual outsourcing was just practical in a world with bad roads and worse shoes. That evening, you rest at a hostel crammed with jangling pilgrims. Everyone's buzzing about the badge drop. Some even forge tiny display frames out of twigs and yarn to show theirs off by the fireplace. You lie in bed, staring at the wooden ceiling, your newest badge tucked under your head like a weirdly uncomfortable pillow. It smells faintly of incense and glory. Tomorrow, you'll leave this crowded, miracle-rich town. Head back to the mud and mid-tier shrines. But tonight, you sleep among kindred clankers, and you dream of a badge so radiant it glows in the dark. Probably invented, possibly real. You'd wear it either way. You're starting to walk with a slight lean. Not because you're injured. Well, not exactly. But because your cloak is now a pewter, laden curtain of devotional enthusiasm. Every step sends a cascade of badge jingles down your back. You're pretty sure one of them tried to lodge itself between your shoulder blades overnight. Medieval problems. Today, you're headed through a stretch of rolling farmland. Less dramatic than shrine towns, more gentle. A chance to breathe. As you walk, you pass pilgrims in every stage of the journey, fresh-faced beginners with gleaming sandals, grizzled veterans, hunched under cloaks, heavy with holy metal, and a man dragging a cart containing only a statue and 2 chickens. You nod at him. He nods back, as if to say, yes, the chickens are part of the plan. You spot a group of younger pilgrims clustered around a low stone wall, giggling as they arrange their badges for a sort of fashion competition. One has laid hers out in a starburst pattern on her back. Another stitched his into the shape of a fish. The boldest has sewn all his badges into a strip down the front of his tunic, like a knight's heraldry, crowned with a shiny replica of St. Catherine's spiked wheel. He's strutting like a holy rooster. You're curious. You ask if this is a regular thing. Oh yeah, one replies. Every rest day we show off. It's not just about where you've been. It's how you wear it. Mainstream historical moment. Pilgrim fashion, especially with regard to badges, was a big deal in certain regions. While the original idea was to pin badges to hats or cloaks, creative pilgrims soon found other ways to express their journeys. Decorative sashes, belts, headbands, even shoes. The trend wasn't just about display, it was about identity. Your own cloak now resembles something between a quilt and a knight's banner. Every badge a noisy story. Every jingle a memory. It's absurd. It's beautiful. Further down the path, you pass a village preparing for a local festival. Paper banners flap in the breeze. A handful of children dart past wearing tunics sewn with pretend badges. Cloth cutouts painted silver. You wave. They scream, "Pilgrim King," and flee giggling. A woman near the market stalls offers to polish your badges for a coin. You hesitate. Part of you likes their grime, the travel-worn look. But vanity wins. She gets to work with a rag and a small tin of grease. In 10 minutes, your badge lineup glows like tiny moons. As she buffs a particularly stubborn goose badge, she leans in. Some folks hire badge tailors. She nods. People who rearrange your badges so they tell a story. Makes the cloak easier to read. You glance at your own haphazard spread die. Toenail near the ladder. Fish upside down. St. Giles doing a handstand suspiciously close to a badge of a crying tree. Story. Might be generous. But that night, at the Pilgrim Inn, you start rearranging anyway. You move the holy toenail to the shoulder, shift the ladder badge upward, as if climbing. Group the animals together. Goose, fish, miracle weasel. St. Giles gets a corner to himself. Artistic license. You finish and stand. A fellow traveler whistles. That's a look. Quirky badge. Fact time day, there's record of a pilgrimage cloak in 1441 that featured over 60 badges, sewn into concentric circles like ripples in a pond. The outermost were said to represent the traveler's sins, and the innermost his redemption. Medieval fashion was occasionally extremely deep. As you sit by the fire, a friar across from you gives your cloak a long look. Your collection tells quite the tale, he says. You nod. It's honest. Mostly. He smiles. Aren't we all? Later, someone starts singing. A pilgrim lullaby, soft and tuneless, but comforting. You add your voice quietly, your cloak heavy on your shoulders, your badges warmed by firelight in use. Historians still argue whether badge fashion was an act of vanity, devotion, or community. Maybe it was all three. Maybe it's like any other human expression. Weird, personal, and impossible to pin down in a single category. As you drift into sleep, you feel the new arrangement of your badges pressing gently into your side. They're your past, clinking softly against your ribs. And tomorrow, they'll go with you again. You wake up with a badge imprint on your cheek, not metaphorically. There's a tiny pewterfish outline pressed into your skin, like your face spent the night confessing to a saint. You groan, stretch, and hear the now familiar clatter of your wearable badge gallery shifting across your cloak. This thing is becoming an ecosystem. The innkeeper gives you a nod as you pass, one that clearly says, "That's too many badges, but I respect it." You nod back, respect. Today, the road leads toward a town known for its badge production. Not a shrine, not a relic hotspot. This one's famous for the source, the makers, the molders, the unsung artisans who have been turning faith, myth, and medieval marketing into wearable tin wonders for decades. You arrive around noon, just in time to see a man outside a forge hammering a sheet of pewter, like it personally offended him. Sparks fly. A thin trail of smoke coils from a chimney, mingling with the smell of hot metal and old bread. You find the badge workshop tucked down an alley, marked only by a wooden sign shaped like a scallop shell with legs. That seems promising. Inside, it's chaos. Glorious, sacred chaos. Tables strewn with molds. Small clay or stone impressions bearing the reverse outlines of saints, relics, and occasionally what looks like vegetables. Workers sit hunched over fires, dipping spoons into pots of molten pewter, pouring with careful speed into the molds. One artisan, face soot-smeared, hand stained, gestures you over, here to browse, or to learn, both. You say, a little breathlessly. He grins. Then don't touch anything. Except this. He hands you a cooled badge fresh from a mold. It's hot. You almost drop it. He walks you through the process. First the mold, carved by hand or cast from a master. Then the pour, Molten pewter, quick and fluid, like pouring lightning. Then the cooling, the trimming, the stamping, if needed. And finally, the optional blessing, which may or may not actually involve a priest. Mainstream history moment medieval badge making was a skilled craft. Though cheap in mass, produced by medieval standards, it still required careful mold carving, metalworking, and finishing. Some regions became famous for it, especially around major pilgrimage routes like Canterbury or Santiago de Compostela. You're invited to try making one. Of course you say yes. You're handed a ladle, shown the safe zone, which is really just don't pour it on your foot, and pour pewter into a scallop shell mold. It sizzles, hisses, then cools into a clunky, uneven badge with half a face. You're told it's charmingly flawed. You cherish it immediately. Fringe tidbit. Some badge molders created intentionally imperfect versions for specific customers. A dented badge might symbolize humility, or one with rough edges might be for pilgrims who hadn't yet completed their journey. Others were just factory errors that got rebranded with medieval confidence. You ask about the more creative designs you've seen on the road. The artisan smirks. Some are commissions. We get requests all the time. Last week someone wanted a badge shaped like a loaf of bread being hugged by an angel. Did you make it? He nods. Sold out in a day. You explore the shelves lining the back wall. They're full of molds, each one a tiny window into someone's belief system or sense of humor. There's a badge for a saint with bees coming out of his mouth, another of a dancing skeleton. One has a tiny hinged door you can open to reveal a smiling face. It's either a metaphor or a marketing gimmick, possibly both. You leave with your handmade badge, wrapped in cloth, tucked carefully into your pouch beside a handful of new ones you couldn't resist. You also buy a small mold fragment, just a bit of broken stone with the outline of a flame. The artisan tells you it's from a ruined set, blessed by disappointment. Historians still debate how widespread individual commissions were versus mass production. Some badges were clearly churned out by the hundreds. Others bear signs of personal touches, unique marks, or regional quirks. The line between sacred object and artisan pride was often beautifully blurred. You stop by a tavern later, nursing sore hands and a warm bowl of stew. A fellow pilgrim spots your cloth bundle. That a forged badge? She asks. You nod. She leans in. I've got one too. Made it myself. Dropped it in the dirt right after, but I kept it. It's mine, you know. You know? That night, you sleep with your self-made badge under your pillow. Not for luck, necessarily. Just to remind yourself that sometimes, even when the saints are busy, you can make your own miracle. You wake with a crick in your neck and the comforting, familiar rattle of pewter badges shifting around your shoulders. One of them has tangled itself in your hair. Again, you're starting to suspect St. Giles might be vengeful after all. The air is crisp today, unusually still, as if the wind itself is pausing to listen. As you rejoin the pilgrim road, you notice fewer stalls and badge booths, fewer clinking travelers. It feels like a lull, the calm before the spiritual storm. Up ahead, a signpost leans sideways in the mud, pointing toward a chapel known for its mirror shrine, a polished slab of obsidian said to reflect not your face, but your soul. You smirk. What would yours look like now? Probably tired, vaguely sarcastic, and crusted with badge imprints. You make your way there, intrigued. The chapel is quiet, mostly empty. You approach the mirror, stare. Your reflection stares back, but behind you, your badges catch the light and dance in the glass, your cloak glittering like a medieval disco ball of tiny pilgrim dreams. The monk watching over the shrine clears his throat. You've collected many. Too many? You ask. He considers. Maybe, but they're all honest. In their way. You nod, stepping back. But outside, something odd awaits, a small wooden placard posted beside the chapel door, declaring in ink spattered letters, IT unauthorized badge sellers will be fined. Repeat offenders may face penitential duties. You pause, Read it again. Mainstream fact drop. By the 15th century, church authorities began to crack down on rogue badge sellers, unauthorized molds, and vendors hawking badges far from the official shrines. They claimed it diluted the sanctity of relics and led pilgrims astray. Some cathedral chapters even issued edicts banning outside badge trade near their grounds. You pass a group of friars at the chapel's edge, murmuring about excesses and badge fever. One even suggests limiting how many a pilgrim can wear. You tug your cloak tighter, protective. The badge backlash has begun. As you continue down the path, word spreads among pilgrims. A town ahead has reportedly closed its badge market entirely. No more trinkets, no more molds, just quiet prayers and stern glances. Some pilgrims are outraged. What's the point then? One mutters. We're walking through muck and goat fields for what? To leave empty-handed. You feel it too. The discomfort. The creeping sense that your badge collection, the thing that's grounded your whole journey, is under threat. You reach a rest stop by dusk, where a tired woman tends a cooking fire. She eyes your cloak. They're trying to shut it down, you know. Say it's become too much like carnival. Isn't that the point? You ask, gesturing toward your goose badge. Faith with a little fun. She chuckles, you'd think. Quirky tidbit time. Not all church officials were badge haters. Some embraced the badge culture, seeing it as a way to keep pilgrims engaged, to raise funds, and to spread devotion. But others saw it as tacky, transactional, even superstitious, especially as badges took on magical associations, protection against storms, fertility boosts, dreams of saints. Things got weird. You pull out your broken mold fragment from the forged town, tracing the outline of the flame with your thumb. Not exactly canonical, but it matters to you. That night, huddled under a dripping tree beside a sleeping donkey, you hear the debate continue around the campfire. They're just jealous. Someone mutters, our cloaks say more than their sermons. Another nods. Maybe they're scared. Badges tell stories. Can't control stories. You wonder. Maybe badges did grow too loud, too shiny, too full of opinions for the tidy spiritual lanes the church tried to maintain. Historians still argue whether the badge bans were about theology, economics, or control. Possibly all three. But one thing's clear, something about these small, ridiculous pewter bits touch people deeply. So much so that even the threat of a crackdown couldn't stop the jingle. You sleep that night curled around your cloak, guarding your badges like treasure. They're not just metal. They're pieces of a path, crumbs from a long, muddy, ridiculous, wonderful road. And tomorrow, crackdown or not, you'll keep walking. You wake to the sounds of the road, waking up with you. Cartwheels creaking, boots squelching through dew. Wet grass, someone loudly explaining how St. Wilgefortis grew a beard to avoid marriage. Classic morning chatter. You gather your things, cloak heavier than ever. The badges jingle with a kind of finality today. You're headed home. Not to a shrine, not to a market, but back to the quiet village you left what feels like years ago. You're not the same as when you left. For one thing, your posture's worse. But your cloak, it's magnificent. The road is quieter now. Many pilgrims peeled off days ago. Others are detouring for one last shrine. But you've seen enough. Your soul, your feet, and your shoulders are ready to rest. Mid-morning, you stop at a bend in the road, overlooking a lazy stream. You sit, let your cloak fan out behind you like a living tapestry. Each badge flashes in the sun, whispering, remember me? That time it rained for 4 days? That shrine with the boot-shaped relic? That fish badge you bought purely for the pun? Mainstream historical truth for many medieval pilgrims. The journey home was often longer and lonelier than the road to the shrine. Without the same sense of purpose driving every step, and with fewer companions around, the return trek became a time of reflection, spiritual digestion, if you will. You pass through villages you barely noticed on the way out. This time, people notice you. Kids point at your jangling cloak. An old man asks if you've been to Jerusalem. You say no, just Canterbury. He nods solemnly anyway. In one hamlet, a woman offers you a slice of bread in exchange for a story behind your crying tree badge. You oblige. Make up something involving repentance and rainstorms. She eats while listening, then hands you a carved bead for balance. Your cloak accepts it without complaint. Later, a passing monk offers a blessing. He barely glances at your badges, just rests a hand on your shoulder and mutters a Latin phrase that may or may not translate to, "Good luck with your back problems." You thank him anyway. Quirky return journey details some pilgrims buried one badge at a roadside shrine on their way home, an offering to mark the journey's end, or perhaps to lighten the load. Others melted one down and poured it into a river, hoping the current would carry their prayers the rest of the way. You consider it. Hold the badge you made yourself in the forge town. Its face is lopsided, its saint vaguely confused. It's imperfect, but deeply yours. You keep it. By evening, the landscape begins to feel familiar. Low stone walls, clustered trees, the same muddy corner where you once slipped and accused the ground of heresy. You're nearly there. As you crest the final hill, your village appears, small and smoky, and exactly as you left it. A few chickens scatter as you approach. Someone's baking something that smells aggressively like turnips. You walk through the gate. No fanfare, no trumpet, just the soft gasp of your neighbors seeing you returned, patched and weathered, and wearing more metal than is strictly practical. Someone claps you on the back. You nod. Words feel heavy. A child stares at your cloak, eyes wide. Are those all real? You smile. Real enough. Historians still argue whether the return home was considered part of the pilgrimage, or just the afterglow. Some say the journey wasn't complete until you slept in your own bed again. Others insist the spiritual work only truly began once the walking stopped. That night, you hang your cloak on a hook by the door. It sags under its own weight. You wash your feet, stare at the soot, streaked ceiling, and let the quiet settle in. You're home. You did it. No badge for this part, but maybe that's the point. The days blur gently after your return, in the way only homecomings can. The rhythms of village life wrap around you like an old, scratchy blanket, familiar, mildly itchy, but deeply comforting. You're back to chores, to nodding at neighbors, to the strangely satisfying act of not walking anywhere more than 10 minutes away. Your badge, laden cloak hangs near the hearth, too heavy now to wear for anything short of a ceremonial shoulder dislocation. Every time you pass it, the pewter catches the light and shimmers faintly, like the memory of a memory. You begin to understand that the journey doesn't end when the road does. One morning, a neighbor asks if you'll show your badges at the parish hall. For the children, he says. Educational. You agree, mostly because the parish has better soup. You lay your cloak out on the long wooden table, like a sacred map. The children gather, wide-eyed, poking cautiously. You point to the fish badge. This one's for Saint Neot, who preached to trout, or possibly argued with them. They giggle. And this, you add, tapping the holy toenail, belongs to a saint who once healed a man by throwing his own foot at him. Probably. You tell stories. Some true. Some true-ish. One or two entirely fictional, but beautifully so. The children don't mind. Neither do the grown-ups. Mainstream fact, pilgrimage badges often became family heirlooms. Passed down sewn into generations of cloaks, or buried with the dead. They turned into relics themselves. Tokens not just of saints, but of the people who had once dared to walk hundreds of miles for something invisible. You notice, weeks later, that your badges have dulled slightly. Pewter doesn't hold its shine forever. But the stories haven't dulled. In fact, they're growing. Mutating slightly each time you share them, like oral traditions always do. Then one day, a traveling friar visits the village. He sees your cloak and pauses, brows lifting. Quite the collection, he says. You nod. Owl from the road. He touches one gently. This one, it's not an official design. You smile. I made it myself. He chuckles. Even better, you offer him a meal. He offers a blessing. A fair trade. Quirky postscript. Some museums today hold boxes of old badges found in rivers, fields, and beneath cathedral stones. Many are mislabeled or simply tagged. Miscellaneous. But once, each meant something to someone. Once, each had a path, a moment, a blisters, and sunburn kind of love behind it. Historians still argue whether the badge craze was a spiritual revolution, a marketing gimmick, or just the Middle Ages having a deeply weird hobby. But in your bones, you know it was more than that. It was movement, connection, a record of walking through the world with purpose, and a pocket full of jingling tin prayers. Sometimes, on quiet nights, you take the cloak down, drape it across your lap, and trace your fingers over the strange, clunky shapes. The goose, the ladder, the crying tree. You remember each step, each conversation, each market, each puddle. They were ridiculous. They were divine. They were yours. And now as the journey slows, let your thoughts soften too. Imagine that heavy cloak of badges, no longer jangling, just resting across your knees. Every metal edge smoothed by time. Every story now a whisper. You're seated by a small fire. The stars outside blink slowly, like old friends. A cup of something warm sits beside you, untouched but comforting in its presence. The village hums with distant sounds. Gentle footsteps, the creak of wood, a dog settling into straw. You close your eyes. Your legs remember the road, but your heart remembers the stillness after. Somewhere, a bell chimes once. You're no longer chasing relics or racing daylight. You're home, fully and finally. And the world, vast and holy and ridiculous, is still out there waiting for the next set of footprints. But not tonight. Tonight you rest. Tonight, you're enough. Sleep well, pilgrim.